Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Red Circle, and the Five Reasons YouTube channel. Make sure you hit like, subscribe, and turn the notifications on. Also, check us out on Off the Floor. That's where you get updates directly from us, from the arena, before they go on X, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, or anywhere else. We put them on our host updates channel. We got 8 other channels there, all of which except one, I believe. You just communicate with each other, and then we pop in and we talk to you during the day about the Heat. So check it out, Off the Floor. That's our new Discord. We've got the link to it right here in the description on YouTube, on the podcast channels, and also pinned to the top of the Five Reasons Twitter page. And also make sure, we keep telling people this, when you go to sign up, scroll down to find how to sign up for the server. The button is right there. Also, check out the great sponsors of the Five Reasons Sports Network. That includes Better Edge. Use the code 5RSN or 5 Reasons. You can use 5 Reasons also. That's the number 5 Reasons if that's easier. BetterEdge.com. You get $20 to play with that code. And this is legal sports betting in the state of Florida and 43 other states because you're betting against others who use it. If you don't like the line, Dolphins plus 3.5, when I don't like that line, by the way, you can find another line on Better Edge because it's a marketplace. So you can search for the line that you want. You're not stuck with the lines that they give you. So check it out at BetterEdge.com. Use the code 5 Reasons or 5RSN. And now, today's episode.
Down to Biscayne. Yikes. 5 on the floor. Ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing. You can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frogs. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the floor playing. Got it all band. Y'all seen the block. Stop with one hand. And Pat we trust. Inspire, have the guts. We're here to bring the heat. Y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, and Alex Toledo, plus others from the Five Reasons Sports Network.
Welcome back to Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons YouTube channel, as well as on the Five Reasons podcast feeds. Here's today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can find me at Ethan J. Skolnick and at Five Reasons Sports. I got Brady Hawk. You can find him at Brady Hawk 305, and Alex Toledo you can find at Tropical Blanket. And today we're going to talk about usage. And so first we have to describe what usage is. We had Sean Rochester on playback today. Make sure you're checking out playback when we do that. We go over the previous day's game, and also, of course, we're there for the live games, which we stream there. But essentially, it's how many of the possessions a player uses, essentially. And it's designed essentially to, I'm using the word essentially a lot today. It's designed to basically say, now I'm using basically, it's designed to show sort of how ball dominant somebody is. And it's not a perfect number. And the fact that it's not a perfect number is indicated that by the fact that if you go to different websites, you'll find different usage numbers because it seems like everybody calculates it a little bit differently. But for the purposes of this exercise, we've chosen the stats.nba.com site, went to the Heat page, and just basically looked for the advanced stats and looked for usage. So what we're going to do today is we're going to take a look at it, and we're going to say who should be more and who should be less, especially if this team is ever healthy. And that is, of course, the caveat because the so-called big three of this team, Adebayo, Butler, and Herro, have started and finished only 6 games together. So I put the over-under for the rest of the season at 9.5, and I don't know if we would play that up or down. But let's get to it. I'm going to read you guys the usage numbers, and just tell me first, before we get into who should be more or less, sort of what pops out to you. So we'll start with Alex here, but I'm going to go down the list here. Number 1 in usage for the Miami Heat is Tyler Herro, 27.9. Bam Adebayo, 27.3. Jimmy Butler, 24.9. We're going to throw out Cole Swider because this is a 7-game sample size in which he's averaged 5 minutes. So take that one out of the equation. Kevin Love is 4th at 20.3. Caleb Martin, who's only played 20 games, but that's enough to qualify. After all, Herro's only played 19, 19.2. Jaime Jaquez, who's the only Heat player to play every game this season. He's played all 37, 18.7. Duncan Robinson, 18.6. Thomas Bryant, 18.1. Of course, he's now out of the rotation. Jamal Cain in his 14 games, 15.9. Orlando Robinson, 15.9. Nikola Jovic in his 11 games, 15.5. Josh Richardson, 15.3. Haywood Highsmith, 13.3. And the reason I gave you guys some of the part-time players here, was to sort of spotlight this particular player. Who do you think is next, Alex, on the list? Who haven't I mentioned?
G. Willikers. I wonder who it is. It's Lowry.
13.2. He is first, second, even taking Slider out here. So everybody has played at least 10 games. Herro, Adebayo, Butler, that's 3. Love, 4. Martin, 5. Jaquez, 6. Robinson, 7. That's Duncan. Thomas Bryant, 8th. Jamal Cain, 9th. Orlando Robinson, 10th. Nikola Jovic, 11th. Josh Richardson, 12th. Haywood Highsmith, 13th. Kyle Lowry is 14th on the team in usage. He's got to be the only starting point guard in the league that's not in the top 6 or 7 in usage on his team, I would think. What is the biggest thing that jumps out to you, Alex, on that list?
Honestly, it kind of tracks with how I thought about it. And, we were talking about this in our chat before the show, basically just that, I'm not sure if there is. And, John Jablanca, this is your bat signal. If there's a way to filter what these guys' usage is with other guys in, Tyler's usage with Jimmy on, and let's say their core 8 or 9 guys, you know what I mean? Just with most of the team healthy, which obviously we haven't seen much, or maybe you bring it down to their core 6 guys, right? Just to get a feel for how they are when most of the team and most of their best players are there. Unfortunately, we don't have that. But based on the usage that you just listed, it tracks with what I thought, because it very much feels like Tyler and Bam are doing a lot out there. It feels like they are in charge of a lot offensively, and really nothing else jumps out to me. I'm only surprised that Jimmy's isn't even lower, because I do feel like he's off the ball more often this year. I don't feel like he's pounding it as much when he is on the ball. He just, I haven't felt him as much this season. So I'm surprised his usage isn't even lower. But of course, Jimmy was playing for a good amount of time there without Tyler, and then of course the stretch without Bam. So the only reason Jimmy's usage isn't even lower than that is because of that long stretch there without those guys, and specifically Tyler. So it about tracks with the eye test, in my opinion.
What jumps out to you, Brady?
Well, what jumps out to me, Kevin Love being 4th, I think is a big one. And it doesn't even surprise me, to be honest, because as we've seen recently, I mean, usage is a big part of it. Is actions that are being run through a player with the ball in their hands, and he is so core and key to everything they do offensively, even in the lineups with Bam, but mostly without. They're going to run the normal pick and pop stuff. They've been doing the mid post stuff. They've been doing high low stuff. So everything is kind of running through Kevin Love in those lineups, where even if it's not to score, they're using him a ton. So that doesn't really surprise me much. The Kyle Lowry in an absolute battle with Drew Smith, I think, is definitely a surprising factor, even though it probably shouldn't be. And it's one of the reasons why when Tyler Herro is being drilled with questions of how do you feel about, being moved to the starting point guard spot without Kyle? And it's he's like, well, I basically do the same thing anyway with him. And this is the reason, because Kyle's mostly off ball anyway. And all the actions are going to Tyler, no matter who is playing with him. That's why this stuff is positionless, because it's just all about who has the ball in their hands. And I guess the one other thing that sticks out, which I think a lot of people will point to, is maybe Nikola Jovic, in the fact that when he is playing, it feels like he should have the ball in his hands more often. And I think we've seen a little bit of an uptick of that over the last 2 games, where he's running a lot more actions. They're putting him in these pick and rolls. They're letting him play make over the top, letting him run the floor.
You can say that for Jaquez too.
You could. But I feel the thing with Jaquez is that he's played so much more that I feel like it's harder to get a kind of a tell on when, what the situation is. Whereas Jovic, when he's played, you could almost always say that he should have the ball in his hands when he's playing, because it's always in a situation where they're down some guys. So,
and it's a testament to him not pounding the ball all the time. Sorry to interrupt, but the way that he's just constantly making
he gets the ball out quick, right? Yeah, he gets the ball to his hands quick, and he can kind of make those quick reads. But I think still maybe a little bit of uptick there would be interesting, just to see how this offense would run in that range. Look, there are only positive minutes last game or Nikola Jovic's minutes, and I'm not sitting here saying plus minus is a big thing here, but it's kind of a translating factor that when he has the ball in his hands in these lineups, good things have happened offensively. So those are kind of the key things that stuck out. And I know what we're going to get at, Ethan. I know we're going to get at the top guys, and that's probably going to be the key. But I wanted to say really quickly, last year, I think Jimmy, Bam, and Herro were all even, like around 25 usage.
They were. They
Where
were
this
like
year,
within a decimal point of each other,
right,
like 0.1 of each other.
which is wild. But it's pretty similar to what Tyler and Bam are doing. And it probably, I don't like, actually, I don't know. I don't know if Jimmy, even if he was healthy, would be at their level. I don't think that would happen like what happened last year. But I think it is pretty similar that it's, instead of being 25, it's 27. And it's just because of them picking up the slack from Jimmy in these missed games.
Well, Jimmy was over 30 in the playoffs last year. So, and again, that tracks. That's why I'm saying, like, it's not a perfect stat, but the eye test kind of told us that last year. And he was over 30. And of course, Tyler wasn't there with the exception of, the one game against Milwaukee, and we didn't get to see it. I want to, before we get into the more or less thing, because I want to go through that sort of one by one. But something we were talking about, Sean and I got into on playback tonight. Your two highest usage guys on the team don't get easy shots consistently. Okay, Tyler, we know, likes to take bad shots. He makes a lot of them. But like that's why when he takes that shot at the end of the game, that one-legged thing, whatever that was, okay, after passing up on an easier one, I'm kind of like, okay, that's Tyler. I've seen him make that crazy corner stuff. Or these shots that are off balance, not necessarily in rhythm. He's a bad shot maker. Like I'm not saying that as a criticism. It's what, and I know I'm going to have the Herro stands all over me today because they were. I posted something that wasn't even about Tyler today, and they all jumped me. You talk about a bat signal, but I didn't get the sense. Those are not bad shots for him, but he doesn't get, Alex, a ton of easy ones, I guess. And Sean and I were getting into the idea of, to be a number one scorer in the league, you have to get cheap points at the line. You have to be able to draw contact and get the fouls for it. And contact doesn't favor Tyler. Like you watch, other two guards, contact favors them. That's what they want because then they get N1s. He had an N1 yesterday. He was demonstrative about it, but he doesn't get a lot of them. And Bam, we've gone through this. His attempts inside 3 feet and inside 10 feet are the lowest of his career. He doesn't get the dunks he used to get. And he's essentially become a mid-range shooter. And he's very comfortable once he gets to the dotted line. We understand all of that. But part of that is, again, with Tyler, I think it's more that he can't get to the line consistently. But with Bam, nobody can throw him a damn lob, like we've discussed. And nobody knows how to enter the ball into the post. And it seems like we were rewatching the highlights. The only person on the team, I used to feel this way more about Tyler with pick and roll, the only person on the team that gets him going towards the basket is Duncan. When they run that action, like that's when he got Bam a couple easy looks. If your two highest usage guys are not getting easy looks, like two guards like Tyler get 6, 7, 8 free throw attempts, he doesn't get them. Or Bam, or centers that are athletic as Bam get dunks, he doesn't get them like other centers get. How can you be a consistently efficient offense when your two highest usage guys don't get easy stuff?
It's tough. And look, to be fair, the Heat are one of the best when it comes to free throw attempts. When you look at their free throw rate, I was just looking at it, I think it was 6. And Bam is a big part of that. Like he's actually having a career year in free throw attempts per 75. He's in the 98th percentile, taking 8 per 75 possessions. And really Tyler is at 3, which is kind of tracks for where he's been at for most of his career. So Jimmy is, of course, the biggest part of that. He's been elite at that the whole time here. And even that, if I go and check really quickly, the last time we had looked, that was down a bit too. It wasn't down too much, but regardless, the Heat are up there. So I think that's the one place that really helps them supplant all these other flaws in their offense, right? Because again, they take, I believe, the 3rd least amount of shots or percentage of their shots being at the rim, and they also finish at like the 5th worst rate. So that's a really, really tough equation to get past when you're a team that's trying to win a championship, right? Like you said, they don't get a lot of easy ones. Not to mention when you throw in the factor that they have one of the worst transition offenses in the league when you're just talking about the way they convert. So that's a lot to get over. Luckily, they've been pretty consistent. I mean, they have one of the best free throw rates in the league as a team, despite all the missed games from like Jimmy and Bam and of course the others, but like it could be even higher. So I think that is something that makes you feel better about it. But you're right, like Tyler and Bam, I think, this usage, right, that they have this season, I feel like that's the product of everything that people have been wanting to see. You've been wanting to see these guys take that next step in their roles, where they're taking on more and more responsibility so that Jimmy doesn't have to do as much. And we all talked about that like as a good thing coming in. And now, like, after seeing it for a while, I'm just kind of over it. I'm not gonna lie to you. And I'm not blaming it on them. There's like part of me that feels like it's going to help in the long run, because they're getting all these reps throughout the season, and I feel like they're going to be able to deal with a lot of different stuff, probably seeing a lot of different coverages. I just don't like some of the habits being formed when it comes to like the shot selection and like settling for stuff. But I don't think like, oh, it's gonna ruin their season right now. But it's just like, if that comes to bite them in the in the playoffs, I'm gonna remember the season and like some of the bad habits that were being formed. So I kind of go both ways about it. People wanted to see their roles be scaled up, and I think that's the product of, I mean, like Bam and getting all these mid-range shots and like 60 something percent of his attempts from the field being mid-range. That's what happens when you put him more on ball. Same thing with Tyler. Like, it's just, they're leaning into their game even more, and like you said, they don't have somebody to consistently feed him easy looks in the paint. So honestly, all of that stuff that we're talking about tracks with everything we've seen. Like, how do you feel about it, Ethan?
I mean, I feel like they need a point guard. I mean, that's I know that's the I know that's the easy thing to say here, and I know that you're going to say that that's on brand for me, because I'm looking at a guy who's 14th on the team in usage as a starting point guard in this team. But I just think, like you said, if Kyle's not going to take shots, which is what he's still good at, okay, then his responsibility should be making sure that these guys get the ball in their easiest spots. And it doesn't. And now, again, he didn't play last night, so he hasn't played the last couple. So it's not on him. And they did put up 120 last night, so they did score. We probably should be focusing more on the defense today, but everybody was getting into, what happened with Tyler at the end of the game. But I do think if they had a point guard that they could rely on to be consistently effective, getting in the paint, probing, creating mismatches, scrambling the defense, getting it bent, and then you get more dunks for Bam, and then you would get Tyler where maybe he doesn't have to rely on waiting for the screen all the time, because there'd be an action that can be created for him. To me, I still think that that's a critical weakness for them. So that's where I come. I mean, he can't be 14th on the team in usage, behind, like, he's behind
Okay.
Haywood Highsmith in usage.
Can I say a couple things about this?
Yes.
So, like, the Kyle thing, I'm not mad at him at all for being all the way down there in usage. In fact, I encourage that. And I think, and of course, I completely understand everything that we've been talking about forever. Like, he makes the amount of money he does. I get it. It is what it is. What I'm saying is, he can't create advantages anymore. We all know that. He can't get by guys. He's fully an off-ball player, a connector, whatever you want to label him as. He should be there. But what I really want to get to is just like, when you look at the team and their shot profile, it's very similar to last year. Like I said, they don't get to the rim much. They don't finish well. And again, they're in the top of the league, and even higher this time. They're first in the league in percentage of their shots coming from the mid range. And to be fair, they make it at a really high rate. I think they make it the 8th or 9th best rate. So if they hit it that efficiently at that high volume is nice. And again, like, a lot of their best mid range guys have been in and out. So you can feel good that is an area on the floor where, even though they settle into it too much sometimes, like I said, they're very good at it. So that's one thing you can feel good about with our offense. And the thing that makes me feel a little weird, though, is like, they've been kind of middle of the pack when you look at like where their offensive rating has been all year. And that's a little bit worrisome, right? Because they've kind of been on fire from three as a team the whole time. So you would think that them like being like consistently having better nights from three than not, they would have like a nice fluky offensive rating somewhere, along the lines of top 10. It's still middle of the pack. And I think, like, yes, I agree with you. Getting like another point guard who could help with getting Bam and others like easier looks would help. And I'm not against it at all. I'm with that, but I just don't know how much it would fix. Cause I don't think it would have to be a point guard who gives you a lot of rim attempts, and just drives to the paint a lot in general, is a scoring threat at the rim, gets others involved, also isn't a negative as a shooter, and also can defend. And even then, that might not solve all their problems. Like, they're all the way at the bottom when it comes to finishing as a team. That it's one guy isn't going to fix that.
For one guy we have seen that's been able to finish on the break when he's just basically gone. And it's funny, as we were rewatching playback, what you've said, Brady, about Jaquez is just he doesn't even look for anybody else. He's 1-on-4 on the break, and he's just going, and he is the one guy who's got to the rim. So I want to get to him after the break here because I want to get into whose usage should go up. I think if we had said before the season again, and Brady, you mentioned this, that Kevin Love was going to be fourth on the team in usage, and also where he is in terms of games played, I think we would have been like, what the heck? But that's basically what's happened here. We'll get into some of these players more specifically here in a second. Before we do, want to mention a great sponsor. You know them by now, Water Cleanup of Florida. You can find them at WCUFL.com. That's WCUFL.com, your one-stop water and mold cleanup shop. Water Cleanup of Florida. Michael, Robert, and their entire team will take care of you from start to finish. They can do the preventative maintenance for you as well if you don't want to rely on the insurance companies after the fact. And again, if they can't do the job, they will tell you. They're extremely honest people. We've sent plenty of folks to them. They've all had good experiences. So check them out. They're based in Boca Raton, but they service the entire Tri-County area. WCUFL.com, Water Cleanup of Florida. If you've got the schmutz, they got the guts. All right, let's get to some of the others on this list here because, again, I'm gonna state this. We haven't seen this team healthy. We probably aren't going to see this team healthy. I think that's where we're at. But the guys who were supposed to be their top four players prior to this season, Bam, Jimmy, Tyler, Caleb, have played a total of 15 minutes together. So how that would actually look when they're all playing, I forgot. I can't remember. When Caleb took his leap last year in the playoffs, Tyler was not playing. So it's not even like we've seen them play against the highest level competition together on a consistent basis. Some of Caleb's best games last year were when Jimmy was out. So it's like trying to get a sample size for the four of them is very difficult. But if I was to say to you, for the guys who are below the top three, and then we'll finish by talking Tyler, because I know that's what everybody wants to do here. Not us, but certainly the viewers and listeners. If you get past Bam, Tyler, and Jimmy, and I say to, and then Kevin, who's kind of an anomaly, he's just sort of doing what they need him to do. But you look at the next three, right? So you've got right bunched up together. You've got Caleb, Jaquez, Duncan. They're almost equal. I mean, and they do two completely different things, the three of them. But who should have the highest usage of that group going forward?
I think it's Jaime Jaquez. I do. I think that's the guy they have to lean on most just because of the versatility of the ways they can use him. And here's the thing. Caleb Martin last year, the playoffs, as you mentioned, without Tyler, and the incredible run he was on, was at 15 in terms of usage. And now he's at, what did you say, was 19? So,
yeah,
like, and this is very small sample size as well. Like, you keep saying that, and that's important to note. But I'm not sitting here saying I think Caleb should go up from 19, or even hover around 19. Like, I expect, especially when healthy, that's going to drop. And I think that's necessary considering the role that you want him in. And then a lot of this is, Jaquez has been playing the role that Caleb was supposed to. And now Caleb's kind of, when he has played or when he does come back is kind of the floater, like the guy that has to linger in a way and kind of pick his spots. And I think that's important. I think they're going to have to kind of balance that and let him play his off-ball role that he was so good at before. Duncan, or not even Duncan, any shooter, if it's Duncan or Max over the last few years, has been around the mark that Duncan's at right now. It's been around that 17, 18. That's usually what their shooter is around. And I don't think you want to push that anymore because if you start relying on Duncan to that next degree, where now it's like they almost do it in his lineups where they're trying to, you mentioned before, he's the one guy that can get Bam on the roll because they blitz, and the stuff where him going to the rim has been kind of an add-on to some of his usage. But I don't think you want to go higher than that. I think that's pretty much you want. You do not want to burn that guy out in terms of your offensive process. So Jaquez is the wild card. He is. He's the guy that you can maybe run some more pick and rolls for. He's the guy that you see as the one-man fast break, as you mentioned. He's the guy where you could put him in the mid-post or move him off ball. Like, there's different things you can do there, where I think that he's the guy that can free things up. And the biggest thing is without Jimmy, because I'm watching him play in these games recently, and I keep kind of pointing it out. It's like he's drawing Jimmy-like attention in the paint. Like, he gets in the paint and 3 or 4 guys are collapsing. And it's like, there are not many guys on the Heat at this point other than, in that grouping that we're discussing that are drawing that attention. They're just not. They're not being able to kind of have that type of gravity. So you have to maximize that. You have to try to figure that out in a way. So among those three, I think that would kind of be the guy that you'd want to see break away. But the question is, and I know we're going to keep saying this, but this may not become a reality because of the injury stuff that we're talking about.
Alex, I'm going to throw the harder question at you. I know you're going to get angry about this because I always throw the hard question at you towards the end here. Do you think that Tyler Herro, because this is the narrative that we see out there from, again, there's no in between with Tyler. There seems to be no nuance. It's like Tua. There's one side and there's the other side, and you literally cannot say anything without angering one of the two sides. And everything gets, I don't, he's become more polarizing over time, which I didn't think was possible. Okay. Do you think he's taking away from positive usage for guys like, say, Duncan and Jaime? Is it that direct a correlation?
I hate to say it is. It's basketball. If someone is touching the ball, others aren't. Now, that doesn't mean that Tyler being on the floor and playing his game is bad for the team. The problem is, it's just like anything else, right? Like everything in moderation. I just think they're struggling to find the balance. And of course, with guys out, and specifically with Jimmy out, everything goes off balance. Like guys, Tyler and Bam, all of a sudden have to do this. So like, I'm not blaming them for trying to figure out like this role while Jimmy is out. They should be doing this. I just haven't loved the results so far. You get what I mean? Like I don't want them to stop trying to figure it out. But yeah, like Tyler has had a bad month. There's no doubt about it. And I wouldn't be surprised if he had a very good month next month playing a similar game. That doesn't mean I won't still feel a similar way that like I wish he played a little bit more off ball. I don't know. Like I said before, if he looks at it as, like he's above doing that, or not that he doesn't do it at all, but like if he's above doing that more often and making that a big part of his game, like I don't think he wants to be considered among like the class of like I don't know, like other movement shooters. Like I think he feels like he's in a better class of player and just all around scorer than that. And of course that's me speculating and just trying to understand. But I do wish he played a little bit more like Duncan at times. And I don't know that's a very extreme type of change. And I don't mean it like I don't want him to try to emulate Duncan, but if he would play off ball more, I think it would make things easier for him and the team. I've said that before. And I think sometimes he pounds the ball a little bit too much in these types of scenarios when Jimmy is out. And yes, you should try to have more, you should and you will have more responsibility when Jimmy is out. But I don't think that balance has been struck perfectly yet. That's basically what I'm saying.
These numbers are totally different in the first half and the second half. I want to credit Jeff Nicholas for posting this up on Twitter today. Herro in 11 games since returning from injury. First half, 13.5 points, 3.4 assist to turnover ratio, 60.7 true shooting percentage. I mean, those are all-star numbers. Second half, 8.5 points, 1.1 assist to turnover ratio, 46 true shooting percentage. So whatever's working in the first half since he's come back, it does not work as well in the second half. And here's where I come down on this in terms of the difference between Tyler now and earlier in the season. I had no issue with his usage early in the season because Jimmy wasn't doing anything. Okay. And Jaquez had not emerged to this point, and Duncan was still kind of feeling his way back into things. But now, even without Jimmy, you have Jaquez who's played at a different level. You have Duncan who's played at a different level. So even without Caleb back, they have more options now. And even we're seeing Jovic, who is obviously a very highly skilled offensive player, has worked into the mix. Tyler doesn't need to do some of the things that I felt he needed to do. And like when he was being criticized the first 2-3 weeks of the season, I was like, why? Like if Tyler doesn't score, who's going to score? But now it feels, and Brady, I'll let you close on this. Now I just feel sometimes like he is trying to do too much, and I don't want him to be done. And this is not pejorative to say be like Duncan. Duncan's obviously elite at what he does. But the point that I think everybody's making is
incorporate some of that, not go down to that.
Right, but see, Duncan has done some of the Tyler things, and he's integrated that without getting rid of the rest of his game. Now I think it's time, I agree, for Tyler to do more of the Duncan things because I think he can be elite at a lot of those things. And I just think there needs to be a trust level for some of the others on this team. And I do think the guy who's going to spike in usage the second half of the season is Jaime. I think once Spo gets in the lab and figures out some different ways to utilize that skill set, you're going to see his usage rate climb over 20. The fact that it's at 18 already is significant. The fact that he's playing 35 to 37 minutes a night, okay, and is played every night. But Brady, I mean, how do they strike? I will close here. How do they strike that balance? Because they do need certain things that Tyler does, because nobody else can do some of the things he does.
Mm-hmm.
But in the second half lately, it has felt like too much.
Okay, so a couple of things. Number one, I'm not a fan of the way that this first half, second half thing has become a Tyler Herro thing. It's a Miami Heat thing. Like, this team has just been very bad in second halves. They're 10th in offensive rating in first halves. They're 28th in second halves. Like this, and you could say it's a correlation of the fact that Tyler's not playing well and the reason they're 28th in offensive rating. But I'm looking at these other guys in this team, and it's just going down. Ethan, we talk about it at the games that it happened in this past game. That first 5-minute stint of the third quarter goes downhill every single game, and I'm just not seeing it being a full Tyler Herro thing. It's a team Heat offense thing that's happening there. And I think the counter argument to some of the Tyler stuff is, yes, Duncan can step in and do some of the stuff that we've seen. And I'm totally, because I've been on board with this for a while, I think they need to make things easier on Tyler. I think they need to put him off ball and let him run off of similar stuff that Duncan's in, just to make his life easier. But they also don't have anybody else to do what Tyler's doing. Like the offense, as much as it is a motion offense and they run certain stuff, it's super pick and roll heavy. It just is. And you look around this team, especially without Jimmy, you're like, okay, who's taking that role? Like, who's the guy that's stepping in and taking that type of, even if it's not his usage, even half of his usage, because they just don't have that guy. What is Josh going to run a ton of pick and rolls? Is it going to be
go back to the handoff roulette? By the way, they're still very
yes.
good at it. I was just looking at those numbers. They're like second in the league in like points per possessions and handoffs,
which Tyler could be a part of, which is why
exactly.
I agree with you. I agree with you about the off-ball stuff, but like to put it all on Tyler, that the second half thing specifically, and also the fact that, like, I think his role is devalued because of the inefficiency stuff, where I think we look at after games, you see the inefficiency and you're like, okay, he's the quote unquote shot chucker. And that's what you see. But like, he's put in a difficult position on this team because he's like the one guy that has to be high volume for this stuff to work. And we say about before, where 100% they don't have a guy that can get Bam the ball. And that's exactly where I am with you, Ethan, where, they, even when it was working before the Tyler Bam pick and roll, like, it's just, they're not able to get these opportunities. They can't throw the lob. They're not drawing away the drop defender for Bam to have these opportunities. But the one thing they are kind of drawing opportunities with is that Tyler and Bam, just being who they are drawing attention from the outside. So they're collapsing on those two. And that's why you're seeing this team that's top 3 in 3-point shooting. So I think that's the one counter argument to a lot of the usage stuff, is that it's the high level, the ball being in so much in the hands of Tyler and Bam is like, okay, you need them to be efficient, but they're also creating a lot of good looks, when things are clicking. So it is definitely a hot topic, I think, with Tyler. So he's so polarizing that he's going to get, the blame on a lot of stuff. And he's definitely not perfect. I think nobody's saying that, especially after the game he just had. I thought there were a lot of questionable decisions, and it kind of adds up to the fact that he had a really solid first half. And then when things went downhill, he started putting up more shots, and then obviously the offense went downhill. So we'll see what happens there. I think as much as we push the thing about can Tyler and Jimmy play together, I just think those guys can help each other out so much at this stage. When it comes down to it, I think Tyler can benefit so much from Jimmy just getting back to his usual, even regular season role. I'm not even talking about what happens in the playoffs. Like, even what was he at, 23? Even that 23, 24 usage for Jimmy, I think could be just so helpful for Tyler to be able to get these easier looks. Because right now, it's all on him in the pick and rolls.
What's crazy is that because obviously, Jimmy has been upgraded, I guess, now to what? To doubtful. And Caleb has been upgraded to questionable, which that seems to me like we might actually see him on Friday. And then Tyler's put on there with a shoulder issue as questionable. And Kyle is still doubtful. And it's just this, like we talk about roulette. That's what this is. It's just like who's playing tonight and who are they going to, and just to develop any kind of rhythm that way where guys know how aggressive they should be or shouldn't be seems to me to be almost impossible. And that's one of the reasons I have given Tyler the benefit of the doubt on a lot of this stuff, because there are certain nights and certain lineups where it's like, okay, he has to be aggressive, but then he also needs to make better decisions than he made in the second half for OKC. Like both against OKC, like both things can be true. And I don't think that, there's stands on both sides of this, and there doesn't seem to be any middle. But I will say the one guy whose usage I think is going to increase the second half of the season is Jaquez, and honestly, could be Jovic too if this continues. That's the wild card, because I don't think Kevin Love needs his usage to be there, and he even wants it to be there. It's just like he's done it because he's been effective at it.
They can't stop him.
That's what,
He's
right, and that's what
involved.
they've right. That's
He's
that's what they've
involved
asked
in
him to,
a lot of their actions in those
Mhm.
bench units.
and those
The
actions have been
transition stuff.
effective. Right. Well, because again, nobody else can do anything in transition. But ultimately, okay, whether it's with Tyler or with Bam, this team, the priority of this offseason, okay, or even at the trade deadline, needs to be getting someone. It's cute to play without a point guard for a while, but there's a reason they exist. And the reason they exist usually is to make sure that guys get the ball in their proper spots. And I don't think you can have your starting point guard be 14th in usage and also not taking care of the other things. I understand he understands his limitations now, so but you need to have more impact from the position, and I just think I think a lot of this comes down to that, and I think that's sometimes why you get frustrated with Bam on, well, why is it all mid range, or frustrated with Tyler on why he's trying to overcreate. Well, some of this is because again they don't have somebody else to divvy that stuff up. So that's where I come down on it. Anyway, better edge. You always ask me, Alex, what I think. That's what I think. Better edge, water cleanup, better edge. Use the code 5 on I said, or 5 reasons. Make sure you guys go to the YouTube channel. Check out Floor's Yours. Brian Fonseca. I believe Tony Schwartz was on there. Sean Rochester was on playback with me today. I think Timothy Bain was joining them as well. So check that out. We'll probably put that on the podcast feed too. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. After all, someone needs to listen to my dad.